Now we continue with our walk towards a monarchy in Israel, and we come to the books of Samuel. Now I can't possibly do a verse-by-verse study of the book of Samuel, not even chapter by chapter. It would take far too long. So I'm going to be selecting the passages that have a particular bearing on the formation and development of the monarchy, and particularly the house of David and the line that leads to the Messiah. So if I leave out some of your favorite Bible stories, you'll forgive me. And once again, you'll get more out of the study if you've already read the first 3 chapters. We begin in chapter 1, verse 1, with a man called Elkanah. Just look at that verse and all the names in it. How would you like to be asked to read that verse in a Bible study group? But the reason for those names is the writer wants us to know we're dealing with a real person with a real history living in a real place. It's quite like Luke chapter 3, verse 1. Look at all those names and places and positions that Luke lists. He gives 19 facts, and what he's actually saying to future historians is, by all means, come back and check my facts to see if my history is accurate. Because the point is this: our faith is based on history, on events that really happened. Jesus really lived, he really died, and he really rose from the dead. We're the only religion in the world that tells the rest of the world how you can destroy us. Just prove that Jesus did not rise physically from the dead, and the whole thing will come crumbling down, and we'll pack up and go home. And of course, many have tried and come up empty-handed. And so all these names, and a place. Elkanah lived in the hill country of Ephraim. That's exactly where our Levite and concubine came from, the story in Judges, remember? Now, Ephraim is at the geographical center of the 12 tribes of Israel, and so it's not surprising that it played a big part. And we read that Elkanah every year went up to worship and sacrifice to the Lord at Shiloh. Wonderful thing when someone can worship and sacrifice. You get people who are good spiritually, and there are people who are good practically. But when you get someone who in their walk with the Lord is deep spiritually as well as practically, it's a special thing. And he worshipped at Shiloh. Now, where is Shiloh? Shiloh is in the tribe of Ephraim, and it was there that they had the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant. So Ephraim wasn't just the center geographically, it was the center spiritually. And you would have thought that that would be the tribe that would be most important, that would endure to the present day. Well, that wasn't to be. That fell to the tribe of Judah. Every Jew you've ever met comes from the tribe of Judah, a few from the tribe of Benjamin. But Ephraim did play a major part in Israel's history up till 722 BC when they were destroyed. We read on that Elkanah had 2 wives. The one was called Hannah and the other was called Peninnah. I often wonder if she had a Bernina sewing machine. Peninnah had children and Hannah had none. And here we come to the crux of the story. Hannah had no children. I've been in the ministry long enough to know that I think the greatest pain that people can feel is the death of a child. But there's another pain. It's not as acute, but it's nagging and it lasts forever. And it's the pain of people who can't have children. And Hannah had none. Childless women play a very important role in the Bible. There are 7 of them, 6 in the Old Testament. Now, if we discount Samson's mother and the Shunammite women, neither of whose names we know, although they play an important part in the Bible in their own way, all of the other 5 play a critical role in the line from Abraham to David to the Messiah. And the first 3 had no children. It almost never happened. And that's the whole point. God is saying, my bringing of the Messiah, my saving of the world, is by my sovereign power and will. And you know, the line was nearly broken again 150 years after David, when Athaliah came to the throne. She was the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, so you can imagine what sort of woman she was. And she set about to destroy everyone with a claim to the throne of David, and she nearly succeeded. But a very brave woman snatched away the child Joash and hid him for 7 years. And for 7 years, the line of David hung by a single thread. But God's sovereignty ensured it would never be broken. And so Hannah had no children, and to make the pain worse, we read that Peninnah used to taunt her rival and irritate her because she had no children. That was very nasty and mean, wasn't it? Well, yes, it was, but sometimes it's good for us to reserve judgment until we know the story behind someone's nastiness. She was not loved. She was not the favorite, and those are difficult things to bear. Well, Hannah took her pain, and one day she went up to the house of the Lord and stood up and prayed and wept bitterly. Interesting, she stood to pray. I don't normally do that, but it's not a bad image. The servant stands and the master sits. And by the way, Eli took one look and thought she was drunk. And there it is again, jumping to conclusions. The failure to reserve judgment till you know the whole truth. Or as Oliver Cromwell put it so quaintly 400 years ago, I beseech you in the bowels of Christ to think that you might possibly be mistaken. But Hannah continued her prayer, and she prayed a vow. O Lord, if you will give your servant, note that word, a son, I will dedicate him to your service. He will touch no strong drink, and a razor will never be put to his head. Just think of that. By the time Samuel was 21 years old, I'm told that hair grows at about 1 centimeter a month. His hair would have been about 2.5 meters long, imagine that. But the question arises, is it right for parents actually to predetermine what their children will be? Well, hundreds of years ago that was actually quite common, and perhaps even today in some cultures it's common, but in our Western modern society it really isn't on. And so I do wonder about the anachronism of the royal family and how long that can endure. But even today, some people have what we call pushy parents. Andre Agassi had them. His parents realized very young that he had talent, and so his father decided, my son will be a great tennis player, and put such pressure on him. It really was very difficult for Agatha to accept. But there were another set of parents who saw that their son was very gifted, but they were pulley parents. They didn't push him to do anything. They just gave him lots of opportunity to do what he liked and make his own choice. And at a relatively old age of 12, he chose tennis. And the rest is history, and what a joy that's brought us. But I'll say one thing for Hannah. She took her decision in the presence of the Lord, and she was right. Samuel was destined to be a great prophet and priest. And she gave to him something very precious. She gave him a sense of purpose in life. It's a great thing to have a sense of purpose in life. I believe God gives a purpose for every one of us, not just for my whole life, but even for every stage of my life. Philippians says, God is at work in us to will and to do according to his good purpose. Well, Hannah went home, and 9 months later, she gave birth to a son, and she called him Samuel, the happiest day of her life. And so she burst into song. And the song began, my heart rejoices in the Lord. Does that ring a bell to you? It's almost exactly what Mary sang in her Magnificat. My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. And in fact, the whole of both songs, they're both quite long, have exactly the same theme. The theme is that God brings down the proud and raises up the humble. I don't think it's a coincidence that those two women sang such similar songs, because they both were to play a crucial role in the bringing of the Messiah. And then when he was 3 years old, Hannah brought her son to the temple. She handed him over to Eli, and we read she gave him to the Lord. That's a lovely image. Whenever parents come to have their children dedicated, when they hand the child over to the minister or the priest, they're saying, he's not ours, he belongs to the Lord. And when the priest gives him back, he's saying, yes, he belongs to the Lord, but he's given him to you for a while, on loan. It's a good thing to remember that our children are just on loan. In fact, that's a good attitude to have for the whole of life. Everything I have is on loan. And so we end with the question, could Samuel have rejected his calling? Some people say by the sovereignty of God, he couldn't have. Some people say that voice of God was so compelling that he couldn't have. I don't know, but I do know that God had a plan for the house of Eli, and Hophni and Phinehas rejected that, and so God withdrew the plan. The sin of Hophni and Phinehas was that they had contempt for the things of the Lord. Now, David later would commit some very serious sins, but he never had contempt for the things of the Lord, and that made all the difference. However it was, when Samuel heard that voice of the Lord, he said his immortal words, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And so the door was opened to great blessing to Israel and to the world.